Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're going to wait just a few more seconds that people log in. We are so excited to be hosting our very first LEN virtual event. My name is Maritza Lizama, and I am one of the co-founders for LEN. I'm also the co-founder and CMO for Captiva Branding. I'm very excited to have three distinguished business leaders share their insights on what this new world of hybrid work looks like. I can't wait to delve in. We're going to wait just a few more seconds, and then I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about who they are. Okay, well, we are going to start with ladies first. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Katalina Mayorga, I'm sorry. Okay. And I will have her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. And I apologize in advance. I've been traveling a lot and I have a pretty bad cough. So I'm going to go, if I start coughing uncontrollably, I'm going to put myself on mute. So just going to give that warning now. But my name is Catalina. I'm the CEO and co-founder of El Camino Travel. We're an experiential marketplace and community connecting women to the world's best and most unique travel experiences and resources.
Fantastic. Welcome, Catalina. Next, I would love to introduce Fabian Koss. Please tell us a little bit about you.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fabian Koss. I'm originally from Argentina, and I'm the co-founder of KC Social Impact Lab. And we advise UN agencies, multilaterals, large corporations, and sports leagues like FIFA and CONCACAF on corporate social responsibility and global sustainability. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Great. It's a pleasure to have you. And then last but not least, my good friend and business leader, Andres Echeverri.
And customer as well. Happy customer.
And happy client forever.
Best branding company out there for those of you that are watching. So Andres Echeverri, I own a couple of small businesses. I'm putting my hat today on ACSI. We provide language access support to enterprise customers and government in the United States. We have a focus in supporting United States-based customers only. Now we have a nationwide reach and very happy to be here and connecting with these great leaders and learning from you.
Excellent. Excellent. And if anybody ever needs any language access services, Andres is our preferred go-to person. And their team is amazing at customer service. So just doing a little plug for my friend. Excellent. So as you guys know, today's event is about strengthening your company's culture in a hybrid world. And what does this mean? And we'd like to have an open discussion, make this as interactive as possible. So we invite your questions to be submitted during our conversation, our discussion, through the YouTube channel, and you can also put them on LEN on the LinkedIn page. So you can do it either way, and we'd love to hear you and your challenges. What are you guys struggling with? What are the leaders' challenges and your questions around remote work? So please, we invite you to participate and make this as interactive and valuable for you as possible. All right, so unless you were hiding under a rock, we all know that the pandemic brought a lot of changes in the workplace. In particular, the almost normalizing of working remotely or working from anywhere. So what has this done to the way that teams collaborate, the way that teams communicate, and the way that leaders lead in this very spread out workforce? So today we want to make sure that it is it's a conversation that will begin here, but we know that it's not going to end here. So we'd like to explore some of these topics, and starting with our first question is, what what is your organization doing to ensure that you are hiring the right people in this new hybrid workplace? So we're going to start with Catalina.
So we have actually always been remote since 2015. So remote work was not new to us, but I do think there was a pretty dramatic shift post-pandemic about with kind of, what works, what doesn't work for remote work. Just there was so many differences in how people approached work and remote work, and so many new people entering a remote workforce. So one thing that during the hiring process that we do is just ask, like, have you worked in a remote work environment prior? And or what works for you? How do you, what is your style of work? How do you like to work in a remote work environment? What's worked for you? What do you think are the biggest challenges? And just start from there and just get a really good base and understanding of how this person thrives. And it's also a great opportunity for us to learn. So other questions we might ask is, what tools did your previous employer or previous clients use that you thought were really great, that helped really facilitate collaboration in a remote work environment? But a lot of the questions that we do ask in an interview throughout the interview process, honestly, are the same questions we would ask if we were in person still, 5 days a week, not 365 days a year, whatever 365 days are a year minus the weekends. But it's really just getting to know the person and them as an individual and what works well for them, how they like to receive feedback, all of that.
And so I'm picking up a couple of things, a couple of clues. I don't know if our listeners are as well, but one of them was that communication style and just having that maybe even more communication than what you would have if you were all in the same physical location. Fabian, what would you add to that?
Well, no, communication is key. And this is very interesting because I think it's also an intergenerational play. I think that really comes into play. I teach, I'm an adjunct professor at the business school in Washington, D.C., and I'm working with a lot of young people. And I almost would consider them, hybrid or teleworking natives, as opposed to myself, that is a hybrid or teleworking immigrant. I think it's natural. I think for them, it's in their DNA. We work with a lot of young people. And I think technology has just changed everything. I mean, look at the way we're all meeting today. I mean, but it's a double-edged sword as well, because we have clients, for instance, and my colleagues. We have an office I'm in Washington, D.C. I've got two colleagues in Boston, and then we have an office in Miami. And we used to have 3 offices, physical offices, and now we have one. And WhatsApp has become our boardroom, per se, or a conference room. So it's for me, what's really interesting is when we're working with a lot of young talent and onboarding a lot of young talent. I mean, it's just supernatural for them.
Love it. Andres, can you elaborate on some of the stuff that we just touched on hiring the right people in this new hybrid work?
Absolutely. So for us, it's never been hybrid. We've always had office space because of the nature of our work. We need office space to comply with some security requirements by our customers. However, 90 to 95%, depending on the season, our employees are remote, and we do have staff in various continents. We have staff in Africa, Asia, the Americas, Europe, and our onboarding has evolved. I made a lot of mistakes growing my company from scratch, and we were very kind of just figuring things as we were evolving. But now our company, in the current dimension that we're in, we have to really think about cybersecurity is a big issue for us because of the type of work that we do. So we have to make sure when we are interviewing folks, we need to understand what's their space where they're working. We have to set them up with our own systems and make sure that they will be able to stand and attack as to the best of our ability, understanding that that's impossible to do. We have to understand those things. I have always, and our culture is very strong. We have a very clear culture and values, and we look for those values with people. I have always said that, and one of the things that we look into is what are people doing where no one is watching? And unfortunately, throughout the years, what I've learned is that you're always going to have your team member that's going above and beyond. And there's going to be a percentage of team members that are going to be doing work from their bed. But that's why you have to align work with key performance indicators so that you can measure productivity in a way that is going to be aligned with your strategy. And the reality is that there's some people that might do their best work out of bed. Why not? And if my customer is being supported, we are secure in the way we're doing work, and it happens that someone needs to work on their bed because now we're dealing with some of our team members that are first-time parents, and we have a good maternity leave office, but when mom comes back to work, it happens that I want her to be able to breastfeed. My wife was not able to do it because she had to go back to work and interrupt that. So she might need to work from her bed or something where she's comfortable taking care of her baby while typing with one hand. I don't know. So we are evolving in our process.
So some key points or some key words that you guys have mentioned is kind of this flexibility, right? That whatever we thought was, this is how we work, adapting. I've heard adapting, evolving, right? And also just being more clear about your company culture, because they don't have the benefit of osmosis, of being around people. And so we can't leave things up to assumptions and just, they're just going to absorb your company culture. So Andres, you brought up a good point about company culture. So how do you guys communicate that? What do you guys do in the onboarding process to transfer those values or transfer that kind of like, this is how we do it here?
So it's very interesting, Maritza. You and your partner have known me for many years. And what happens is that now my company is kind of getting heavy. But it's one of the things where the last 2 years I really have been working on building our company culture and invested one of our members of our executive team to get out of billable production work into working on engagement. So we started very intentionally on internal communication and engagement. And then now we go for the outside world. And we have very clear, like for example, here we have like our mission, our vision, and everybody has like their values. And we do a lot of offsite trips where we meet and kind of go through that stuff. I tell you, it's tough. It's very difficult because what has happened is that before everybody was used to being able to have access to me. And now I just can't. People can't have access to me. And before, one of my staff, for example, will tell me, well, this person is being bothered by this. And I will respond to it. Now I have to be okay with understanding that we have to run the business and you can't make everybody happy. And we're transitioning because now one of the things that I've struggled tremendously as a leader is that I am a really nice guy. So accountability, I'm really good at leading and managing, but accountability is a piece that I'm not good at. So I had to hire kind of enforcers for accountability to do that piece, because especially when you have a remote workforce, the accountability piece is something that you have to keep really close, especially if you have a company that's growing, because otherwise you start having what I call the leaky faucet. You got waste all the way.
No. And Catalina, what are you doing to transfer the values and your company culture to your team, since they're not all in one place?
Yeah, so I have so many thoughts on what has been shared so far, but I do think, it starts at the top, and clear communication is really, really important. So just communicating expectations, communicating and really exemplifying and modeling the type of culture you want within your company. You have to be so proactive. You have to be so intentional. This is not something, especially in a remote work environment, as you rightly pointed out, Maritza, they're not around, so they can't absorb company culture. They don't have those water cooler moments, so you need to create them. I think for us, leveraging tools and third-party applications, and being clear on how you use those tools. So our project management tool, where we track our KPIs and everyone is accountable. We also use OKRs, objective key results. That's in Monday. We use a program or a tool called Monday. But then the tool we use to really create that more informal type of quick communication, but also creating an environment to have more of those water cooler moments, is Slack for us. So we actually created channels to be able to create those water cooler moments. So we actually have a channel called Team Water Cooler. So that's where people can drop pictures of what they did this weekend, their dog, their plant babies, like their kids.
Fun!
Yeah. So it's really being intentional about that. And then, you or the leadership team participating in those channels as well, or asking questions. We also have so for us, there's two, we are customer obsessed. And often for us, our customers are not only the travelers who join our community or who go on our trips, but our customers are all these incredible tour operators and small businesses and entrepreneurs we're working with in countries like Colombia, Morocco, Egypt, all of this. And one of our channels is Team North Star Impact. So everyone has to drop in, what is an impact they either had on a traveler or one of the small businesses we work on. Like, what is something that you learned about them? What is something that you, a nice note that a customer sent you, or how the trip changed their life? That reminds people why we're here. Why are we doing this in the first place? And kind of pulls them out from the weeds and the day-to-day and all the administrative thing, and reminds them of the big picture. And that's really everyone participating. And then the last channel that we do is the kudos channel. So it's Team Kudos, and that's where everyone can give kudos to someone else in the company. And this person really helped me brainstorm around this project, or I was having trouble with this and they really stepped in. And then how we encourage that is we actually have a raffle each month at our team meeting to kick off the month. And everyone, if you got a kudo, it's one ticket or entry into the raffle. And then we have like a virtual pinwheel, and we do it at the end of the meeting. And whoever gets selected gets a $150 gift certificate to go take them and someone else out to a meal. And then the whole thing is they have to share a photo about, like, who did they take to the meal? Where did they go? Tell us about the restaurant. What did you eat? So it's super, what it all comes down to, it's like we've been very intentional about, and especially post-pandemic, when people are feeling more isolated than ever, when there's so many questions about just the world in general, like, how do we make people feel part of something? And in a remote and work environment, you have to be really intentional.
And Catalina, I did pick that up, that you cannot leave this up to chance. This is not a passive way of leading or a passive management style. This intentionality, this proactiveness, this leading by example, participating in those team Slacks. Like, how awesome is it to have the owner or the CEO just chime in, give the high fives, and being leading by example. Leaders eat last, but they lead first. They lead by example. So I think that was a big takeaway from what you guys are saying, is that this is not the old model where it just kind of happened maybe naturally.
Yeah.
You do have to be proactive, plan ahead, and give these little things. I love the water cooler moments, because I had a note here asking about how do you create water cooler moments? And Fabian, I'll ask you to chime in to this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Those water cooler moments are so important. I always tell people that my secret sauce has been in the office, in the sense that I get things done and I work with my clients successfully at the water cooler, at the coffee breaks, in the elevator, at lunch, at the bar, and those opportunities sometimes aren't happening right now. So we're adapting, we're constantly learning. So for me, it's all about empowering. I mean, empowering these people to, find their strengths, and it's okay to, to make mistakes, but feedback. I mean, we're constantly getting, that for me, that's the most important element to all of this is feedback. What's working, and more importantly, what's not working. And it's and time management also is something that is front and center for us, because we work literally all over the globe in 5 different time zones, and it's that can be a challenge as well. But finding, and you learn this through regular check-ins as well. I think that's also another important element to all of this. It's because we're remotely, you have to know what the right hand is doing with the left hand and so forth.
And speaking of these like regular check-ins, do you guys use, you mentioned OKRs, you mentioned some KPIs, like what are some key things to remember when you're doing those weekly or daily check-ins, or however often you guys do them? What are some of the keys to making those things successful, especially since you don't get to see their work until after, right? You don't get to see them at their desk typing all day long or interacting with clients and doing their work up until you do their check-ins or something gets submitted to you guys for approval. So what are you guys doing there to make those check-ins more beneficial and productive?
Well, in our particular case, it's one of the things that we pride ourselves in is ownership. Ownership of we work project based. We work on retainer based, but we also work on a project based. A project has a statement of work. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And we assign a team leader, and it's that team's leader responsibility, and that's part of our empowering that team leader, and based on their ganas and their desire, and more importantly their expertise. But that's for us is the most important thing is clarity, and I think everybody here mentioned clarity, where you have you know what the key performance indicators you're looking for are, what the client is looking for, and you know what the deliverables are. But that's ownership for us is the most important thing.
I'm sure you guys are looking for those qualities even in the hiring process, right? Like, how do people take that ownership? Because in a remote work, you are your own boss in a way. You have to manage your own time. You have to figure out how to not have those distractions in your work environment, wherever that is, whether it's a coffee shop or if it's at home, or in a shared work co-op thing. Andres, do you have anything to add?
No, I think I've learned. Actually, I'll be following up with you guys on some of the things that you all are using, which is very exciting. We also do, and I don't do this, and I apologize. I'm fully supportive of the effort, but there's some tools that I just don't know that we use. But I know the leader that handles this for us does net promoter score measurement for our internal customer, and we have this thing called Axion, which is like a monthly. They do like a monthly letter, but there's actually people get on a call on the Axion to just engage and check in with one another. This year, I know we had our first ever ACSI awards. So we did awards and we aligned them with our values. So people would get values, and but it was by peer review and votes. So that was something that worked really, really cool, and rewarding people for getting those. It was weird because I got a couple of awards, and so it was kind of weird getting that, but also nice to get that feedback. But then when I did is that other team members that had received votes under those awards, what I just did is that my team decided that I should get an award. I just kind of gave my awards to them. I think that the one thing is that we do have very clear is that we do have a career management path. I believe very much in forward looking. So we subscribe very much to Jack Welch way of managing people. So we do the Welch grid, which is forward looking and having people with a career path. where we give them tools so that they can continue evolving in their career. And that has been an effective thing. The one negative thing that I do see is that unfortunately we haven't figured out is, and it used to bother me a lot, but this week, for example, someone in our billing team resigned. We're hiring billing clerks, someone knows of someone, and also a billing and admin manager, someone knows of someone. So the person resigned and she was going through some health issues, and I just didn't know about that. And you can promote things, but unfortunately sometimes people want to keep things private, and until a crisis happens, how do you react to it? So we tried to react in the best way towards it to give her time so she could decide to stay, but she made the decision that she needs to take some time for herself. But the one challenge on hybrid, I do believe that seeing people in the eye, even the smell of people sometimes, how people are, how they're reacting to a situation, you just sometimes just don't know. And I do believe that's a challenge that we have. But there's other benefits to remote work, and I don't think that that's going to change.
So the wonderful thing is that we are getting some questions from our audience, and I want to tap into those. So one of the questions is, what does accountability look like in hybrid digital spaces? So how would you quantify that? How are expectations set and results measured? Are there, give us as concrete examples as possible. And after that, we'll talk about some tools.
I can go. So I know I mentioned OKRs. If you're not familiar with OKRs, objective key results, tons of amazing resources out there. We've been transitioning over the last year, building out our own tech. And so we have been thinking and more of like a tech startup and really implementing a lot of the tools they use and the frameworks they use, because things move so quickly and so rapidly, and you need to see results see progress not in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or end of the quarter. You need to see them with 24 hours, and then you need to decide if to pivot or not. So the objective key results framework has been really helpful. And again, it starts at the top. What is the company objective? And then each department creates a parent objective of like that ladders up to the company objective. So whatever your objective is, like, this is what we want to achieve in Q1 of this year. How does that ladder up? And that's very different from KPIs. KPIs let you know, they're the North Star to let you know if you're moving in the right direction. But within each department's parent objective, then there's child objectives, and each person on the team owns one of those objectives. They are responsible for that objective and showing progress. And there is a clear, some sort of clear metric tied to that, that also ladders up to the KPI, so that you can see progress is happening week over week, and everyone has to report out on their objective, their child OKR, each week at their team meetings, and then at the company meeting every 2 weeks. And so if someone's not making progress, it's accountability not only to their leadership and their manager, but it's accountability to the whole team. And so that's really how we build in and bake in ownership and make people feel ownership within the business. And so that's something that's been really important to us. And then one thing though that we're really clear is we're not married to these objectives. If we are not seeing progress, and you're testing out, like, your child objective is to do X amount of experiments or blog post or whatever it might be, and we're not seeing results, we got to pivot, we got to change. And that's not on you or anything, it's more of like, hey, we tried and experimented, we're a culture of experimentation, and it didn't work. So how do we reframe it? How do we think about it? So I think it's really important, because people get really stuck on the objective, and it's like, if something's not working, why are we going to double down on it, on that? So, and every objective is different. So it might take a little bit while to see progress, to understand, but really working with each individual to understand, how do you know if you are making progress on the objective? when are we going to make a call? If we don't see X in 2 weeks, do we pivot? If we don't see X in 30 days, and coming up with that individual person. So again, that they feel ownership. Like, you actually are the one that, you're the one leading and driving this. You're telling me. I'm more than happy to be a sounding board and feedback, give my input, but really want you to be proactively involved in that as well.
I think ownership is highly tied to job satisfaction, and where people feel like they have control over decisions, or that they're making an impact in your organization. They feel like they matter, that their work actually has a purpose. All that stuff is tied back. If you can align all those things, it's fantastic. Fabian, I'm going to ask you another question that was posed by Natalia F. In our chat. And the question is, do you have someone in your company designated to maintain or incentivize team members? So similar to Catalina and Andres, how they mentioned they had awards, or that they had, the kudos things. Like, do you have a designated person who actually is doing these kind of team member incentives?
That's a great question, Catalina. No, we absolutely do. We have an internal cheerleader of sorts, and she's virtual, and her task is to keep us going, keep us online, but also celebrating. I mean, celebrating is something that's extremely important, and it's something that we take for granted. And now we're seeing a little bit more with a hybrid when we are in person. And Andres mentioned looking into your client's eyes or your colleague's eyes. But celebrating and encouraging, because it can be lonely, because we unplug the channel or the Zoom link or the team meets, and we are sometimes by ourselves. So there's that cheerleading, that encouraging role is super important, and it's that same person who wears many hats also, because she's also in charge of measuring and getting the feedback. We're all about feedback, not just from our clients and our partners, but internally as well. Because one other big challenge, which is also something that works with this virtual hybrid model, is we do a lot of plugging and playing, because we do a lot of project-based work that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, whether it's a media campaign or putting together a thought leadership conference. And so we encourage those people. We want, and especially if that campaign or that project is successful, we hope that person that we onboarded for that specific project will come back. So that person has to be happy. So we have to have somebody who's responsible and whose job it is to, not just to encourage, but to cheer on and to support. And Andres also brought up a really interesting point on the business, on the professional development side. I mean, training. I mean, that's empowering, our employees and our team members to progress and to learn. And we will consider anything. I mean, we'll consider any type of training. One of our colleagues, for instance, was having a hard problem communicating in public speaking, because she was always, she's very young, and she finished college online because she didn't, because of the pandemic. And then she was nervous because once the pandemic, once people started coming out and meeting again in person and working in these hybrid models. So, we provided her training in public speaking. So,
you bring up a good point there, Fabian, and I'll open it up to the rest of you guys, that incentives for people come in different forms. Not everybody is motivated by the same thing. You don't just throw money at stuff. Sometimes a really well thought out specific shout out in front of their peers as to what they specifically did well, and that you high five them, a virtual high five, the shout outs, that goes a long way for some people. Other people, they love those DoorDash gift cards, because they're somewhere else. So you bought them lunch, right? And that they could buy whatever they wanted with that DoorDash or stuff. Like, food is my love language. So you feed me, I am your BFF forever. So that would be for me, but maybe for somebody else, it's something else. So I think one big thing for us leaders is reading your audience, reading your team, and saying, you know, Maria gets really motivated by this, and Bob really likes that. You need to adjust to how they feel valued, how they feel appreciated. Anything to add there, Catalina?
Yeah. So I think this goes back to also, you can be proactive here in getting to know each of your employees individually, or having your managers get to know them individually. And one thing we do is on our Monday board, everyone fills out a template of get to know me. And there's a bunch of questions of like, what's the last trip you went to? More funds, but also like, how do you like to receive feedback? And then another question we have is, what Enneagram number are you? And so you can have each person on your team take a free Enneagram test. I don't know if people are familiar with that. It's different from the Myers-Briggs. Another test that I really, really like, it's more expensive, is the personality insights test. So the color one, yellow, green, blue, red, which has been very insightful for me personally as a leader. But have them do the free online Enneagram test. You see if they're 3, 4, 5, whatever. And from there, you can get a really good idea of how do they work, what's challenges, what's their strengths, what's their weaknesses, how do they probably like to receive feedback, or what motivates them, and really taking that into consideration. And again, being proactive about it rather than reactive, and seeing how people respond, and then having a conversation, communication, especially in a remote environment, is, okay, you're an Enneagram 3. That means you're, really need clear goals. You're a little competitive. Like, does that resonate? Does that not resonate? Having a very open conversation is super important in these situations, where you're not getting to, again, have those really organic moments of let's go grab coffee. Let's go grab a drink after work. Let's chat, so I think that's important.
You have to kind of create that serendipity, right? Andres, anything there to add?
No, just the only thing probably to tie, because I think that Fabian and Catalina have talked about great tools, is something that we have been using with our Welch grid. Is we use this thing called the 6 steps of genius. And what it does is that pretty much I look at what the theory is, that there's things at work and at home that drive energy for you. There's things that are neutral, and there's things that take out energy. So we have a mapping for each individual. Like, I know my wife tells me I have to be good at everything of those in my role.
You do. I know it's a high expectations.
Yeah. But for example, with the team members, is understanding that, because, for example, before we bring in someone new that is going to be in a leadership position, we need to understand what is the current energy level and dynamic of the map of that team, because you don't want to bring, for example, there's a couple of things that just bring energy. So for example, some people, there's drive energy out of innovation. There's another one called tenacity, which is the ability to close on projects. Another one that is discernment, and there's different ones, enablement. So you want to understand that makeup, because probably you don't want to have a project coordinator that doesn't drive energy out of tenacity, that is not going to be able to drive energy out of closing projects and keeping timelines. So understanding that as your team works is probably just the only thing that I add, aside from what you guys described.
We did talk a little bit about the tools, and I know that Catalina mentioned Monday. We personally use Reich. There's some people that use Asana. Whatever you use, just make sure that your team uses it, right? You're paying for it, and the tool is only as good as the members who are using it. So I think that would be one tip. Are there any specific tools that you're using, Fabian, that you think would be beneficial to our listeners?
We're using Reich, and we're using Zoom. Zoom is, and WhatsApp for us has been our savior. I can't tell you how many WhatsApp groups we've created, especially working. We have a lot of projects.
We do the same.
We have a lot of projects in the developing world. primarily in Latin America and the Caribbean, where we're working with entire ministries of education who are reaching the schools, through the smartphone, because these kids can't get to the school. So WhatsApp for us has been just it's a
Game
double-edged
changer.
sword because it's been a game changer, but you can't escape it.
Can't turn it off. Can't turn it off. I know that we have more questions from our audience, and we're going to put them on the screen. Any recommendation on how to cut turnover during this challenging time, especially for new businesses? Great question, Carol. I'll leave it up to Catalina.
Yeah, I can comment. So I think there's a couple things. Another tool that we've discussed a lot of it, just making them feel part of something, reminding them, what is the bigger vision, the bigger mission, and then making them, setting them up for success. So that goes back to clear communication and expectations. So just they have a really strong understanding of like what does success look like for you as their manager or as their leader, and what are their thoughts and what are their feedback on that. I did want to mention one other tool that we use that has been more on the social side. It's called Gather Around, and so it's a tool that we do twice a month, or actually once a month now. It's more of a social tool. Everyone comes in. It's end of day on a Wednesday, and I participated in it as well. And you basically have like games, but they're way more thoughtful. They're cards of like, we're doing a series that's 52 weeks. And one was like on family, one was on mentorship, and they're amazing, thoughtful questions. And you get broken up onto one-on-ones. The tool like will pair everyone one-on-one, and then the virtual card set's there. So you go through it with whoever's, you got paired with. You can get paired in small groups, and then you have a group discussion. And it really has nothing to do with work, but more like who you are as a person. And so that's been a really great tool in I've just learned so much about my team, and I've heard some very hilarious stories. It's those types of stories you would hear at happy hour or at coffee that, again, we have to be very intentional about it. So,
and it's called, say the tool name again so we can all write it down.
Yep. Gather Around. So
awesome.
Yeah,
That sounds cool. So fun.
It is.
And what a great icebreaker, but also as a get to know you thing. And you don't have to come up with the questions. The questions are already there. So fantastic. We have another question from Christian Irabien. He's also one of the co-founders for Len and a fantastic chef, just saying. His food is delicious. So his question is, how is everybody setting cultures where team members aren't afraid to fail? That's a very important question. Safe spaces. How are leaders building trust with staff when most or all interactions are happening online? So the trust factor, safe, and just having leadership communicate that. Andres, would you like to take that?
So absolutely. I think that's, I would answer the question on both sides of the spectrum. So what I have learned and what we used to do before is that we will actually put people in positions that they could fail just because we didn't have the resources. So I made a lot of the mistakes people make when they start a business, which is I didn't bring in investors, I didn't have funding or a partner. So we were really low budget. I will get great people with great values, but competency level, I had to kind of raise the bar and all the time. So as things evolve, you need to have team members and create space. We allocate, depending on the role, 10% of time where people can work on things that will allow their job to evolve and create new product and services. And, we give them an upside if anything happens there. But on the other side of the spectrum, something that we deal with is that I do have big, bold ideas. I tend to have crazy ideas. And people freak out. So, for example, now we're working on a couple of contracts where we are hiring like 300 people. and the current team freaks out just thinking about it, and they had nothing to do with the project, but for some reason people get overwhelmed. So communicating that growth in a way that is um, controlled and managed is only going to add opportunities for people. But managing people have fears for some reason. So that's an area that I actually personally struggle with, because you want to kind of, in this economy, which is very volatile, and industry changes all the time. What we try to say is, like, listen, we're ahead of the curve, we're innovating, we're doing things differently than our peers. We are growing. My job is to keep you guys busy, to keep everybody busy. And sometimes people on the other side of the desk, they are like, I don't want to be busy. I don't want to be that busy. I'm afraid of that growth. So that's the biggest challenge that we have. And going back to your original question, is just making sure that you provide people with the resources so that they can be successful. And determine when people don't have the ability to be successful at a role, when you provide tools, and understand that that's fine, and that failure works. But there's you do have to have clarity, though, on allowing for failure, because there are things that should not be compromised. There's mistakes that will happen, but there are things that should not be compromised, and you need to have a lot of clarity on that. Because, give an example. If I have someone that manages our treasury management for our funds, if that person makes a mistake on a wire, and she wires $10,000 versus $100,000,
it's a big mistake.
Wow.
That's not a rounding error.
But it can happen, right? So what process can you do so that you have a check and balance, so that when that happens, someone else can look at it, and hopefully someone can catch it? But what's the elasticity of mistakes that you permit people to have? Because I do also think, and that the younger generation, and I'm kind of, I'm an old guy now, generation has done a very good job of understanding what life is about and having this life balance and so forth. But I do believe that sometimes, as an entrepreneur, the balance is tilted towards your disadvantage, because you can't eat the cake, have the cake and eat it too, right? And that's why they call it work. So it's having that balance.
Right. We will have one last question, as our hour has almost flown by. And this question is by Juan Cardona. He is also a LEN board member. How can you build a community and strengthen work relationships? This is where our conversation started, and this is where we're going to end. How do we build community? People crave community. And we saw this during the pandemic, when we were forced to be apart, and how it affected people's well-being, their mental health, and just the camaraderie. So how do we do this in this new world of hybrid work? How do we build community? So I'm going to start with Fabian, and then I'm going to end with Catalina. Okay.
For me, building community, I boil it down to one word: listening. I mean, listening is so important. Understanding, having that compassion, but listening. Sometimes we get caught up between going from one Zoom to the next Zoom to the next meeting and we're promoting what we're doing. And we have the similar growing pains that Andres has in the startup world. But sometimes it's just, if you want to build community, if you want to understand your client, your colleagues, your prospective clients, your community is to listen. And I don't want to be hypocritical, because sometimes I even myself forget, to really take a pause, take a breath, and listen and get to know that person.
Fabian, aside to what Fabian said, which is, stepping back and kind of listen, and which I think we crave for that. I believe we're going to experience a renaissance on human connectivity. People are so focused on AI, which is very valuable. I'm actually doing some work around it, but it's all about human connectivity and basic hygiene needs. For what I found is that it's all about purpose. So what we found is our team members really value like our purpose, okay, of giving love back to the community, and that folks say, hey, listen, they feel that by doing our work, we were able to do X number of scholarships. By doing this, we're able to support legal services for X number of customers, right? On an NGO. So it's aside, listening and an alignment of purpose, that there's purpose because the younger generation does have clarity on purpose, which is amazing and great. And I love purpose. Ultimately, something that I've learned in the pandemic and when we've gone through tough times is that I can never convince someone to stay with us because I throw them a $10,000 additional incentive or whatever. They will go to bat for us if there's that purpose alignment and that connectivity where you have an opportunity to know their parents' first name, their mother's first name, their child's first name, understand those key moments.
Even remembering their birthdays, something so, so small.
Yeah. And having someone that checks on that stuff on their anniversaries and remind yourself, when I get like really busy, I actually lose a lot of energy and I don't like it. But when I need some energy, I go back to what Fabian was saying. It's like, just call someone and listen to them, talk to them and connect at that level.
Awesome.
Catalina, bring us home.
and what can be more important than building community, right? Creating that positive environment where people thrive, man, they will make your business successful. It might sound cliche, but people are the heart of every brand. It's the people. So yes, bring us home, Catalina.
Well, everyone's shared amazing resources and tips and tools. And I know I've shared a lot of building community, again, being intentional on a lot of the things I mentioned around Gather Around and Slack. But one, just to add another idea, is encouraging, especially if your team is remote in different geographies and different places, but encouraging them to create community outside of work that is connected to their job. So professional networks like LAN or whatever it might be, or just other professional networks that might be local and that they're gathering, so they have that more in-person connection, because people crave that. They love the flexibility of remote work, and it has allowed so many people to really have more work-life balance, but still be able to contribute in a meaningful way to their company or organization. But everyone's craving that connectivity. So helping them think through, what are other organizations you can connect to in your hometown or regionally? Maybe, if you are financially in the position to allow them to go to conferences or meetups, giving them a stipend for that. So they are building that network. And at the end of the day, that's going to benefit your company and your organization, because they're going to bring those new ideas. They're going to bring those new connections. They're going to bring those new networks to your company and help your company grow. So, I think that,
that's a fantastic idea, Catalina. I didn't even, I'm a big proponent for personal development, leadership development, sending people to trainings and all that stuff, but just being intentional about plugging them into their local professional community so that they have an opportunity to see others, whether same industry or across industries. That's such a cool thing to say, hey, this works for us. We'd love to see you thrive where you are. Make sure to plug in. Here are even some recommendations of networking events or organizations where you can benefit from. And as you said, like, they get better, it just helps you guys as well. So in a way, as we invest in our team, we are also investing in our businesses. Well, guys, this conversation has opened up new ideas, new approaches, reminded us why we're in this, and that our people are the heartbeat of our organizations. And if we invest in them, we will have sustainable businesses. I want to take a moment to say thank you to each one of you for taking time to come and share your insights. Every single one of you contributed to this conversation, and we walk away with some really concrete examples on how to build a thriving hybrid workplace. I also want to give thanks to the host, the Met community. Thank you for allowing us to use your platform and without a glitch. Isn't that wonderful when technology works? And everybody got to hear this. We'll also, I believe, we'll have a recording so we can share this for you. But more exciting things are coming. We are building out more programs and more events similar to this. So please submit your suggestions as to what topics you would want us to discuss in the future. And I'm going to give you guys each 30 seconds to give your last closing remarks, and then we will call it a day. We'll start with Andres.
No, I just wanted to thank for the opportunity. It is great to learn from you guys, Catalina and Fabian, on what the work you guys are doing. It's amazing. And just be able to add some additional points that it's always cool to see what other folks are doing. And thank you for the invitation.
We love having you. Fabian?
I'd like to thank Len and Matt. It's such a pleasure to meet new friends because we're colleagues. We're here on a professional basis, but we're human beings. And I think that's something that we have to take into account. And I think most of us, even though Andres did bring up the chat GPT, so we're still human. But thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And Catalina?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. Just a reminder that we're all struggling with this. I still struggle so much with I'm still trying to figure it out. And I've talked to so many other founders and entrepreneurs that are questioning, having doubts. And so the more we can work together and share ideas, and really appreciate Lynn creating this space and opportunity, the more we all, boats rise and we all learn from each other. So always feel free. I'm on LinkedIn to reach out to me if you have any questions or, have any ideas. More than happy to help in any way I can.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining us, you listeners, you participants. Thank you for sharing it on your LinkedIn, on your social media channels. We appreciate the love, and stay tuned for more. Have a great afternoon, guys. Bye-bye.